Welcome back. As questions loom over where the Israel-Hamas war goes next, there are also questions that remain unanswered about what led to last weekend's surprise terror attack by Hamas. What went wrong with the intelligence? Will there and should there be renewed scrutiny of Hamas's long-standing relationship with Iran? I spoke with U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby Friday to discuss those very issues. Have a listen to our conversation. Hi, Admiral Kirby. Pleasure to welcome you back to our program. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
What's the risk, Admiral, in your estimation at this time of this war breaking out on additional fronts?
Well, that's one of the things that we're very, very concerned about. In fact, you heard our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was in Israel just today talking about that. We don't want to see any other actor, any other organization or nation state try to take advantage here and widen and deepen this conflict. And so that's one of the reasons why the President has sent such a strong signal of deterrence, why we moved a carrier strike group into the Eastern Mediterranean to make sure that anybody else in the region understands, we do not want to see this widen or deepen.
Is it fair to say that's the primary objective of Secretary Blinken's meetings, for example, with other actors in the region?
It is certainly a message that he is taking forward to other countries in the region. But again, this is also aimed at other actors who necessarily don't have capitals and in cities and towns. I mean, you got terrorist groups as well, like Hezbollah, who are sitting there in Lebanon, and we don't want them poised to try to, again, escalate or deepen the conflict. So it's a message to really everybody.
How would you qualify, Admiral, the potential risk, or impact maybe is a better word, of this war broadening?
Well, I mean, it could certainly mean more Israeli casualties. It would certainly, it could result if there was a widening of it in casualties outside Israel. Nobody wants to see that. It is enough that the IDF is focused on Hamas, as they should be, and we just don't think it's in anybody's interest, certainly not Israel's interest, for a new front to be opened up and for them to have to divert resources to that front. So again, we're sending the message loud and clear, and we're backing it up, of course, with that carrier strike group in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Would there be cause for more direct U.S. involvement should the war broaden?
Yeah, I don't want to get into hypotheticals or speculate about any potential future operations one way or another, except to say, and there's no intention or plan, by the way, to put any American troops on the ground in combat in Israel. None whatsoever, and the Israelis don't want that either. That said, the United States has broad and deep national security commitments and interest in the Middle East, and we mean to protect and we mean to defend them. We've got military capability to do that, and we've added to some of that military capability in just recent days.
I want to also ask you about Iran's potential involvement in this. Is the involvement of Iran in this attack a matter of degree?
They are certainly complicit, broadly speaking, by virtue of the fact that they've been supporting Hamas now for many years. Hamas wouldn't be able to function without the support that they get from Iran. We're mindful of that, and we have heavily sanctioned Iran, and we've heavily sanctioned Hamas. In fact, they're probably the most heavily sanctioned terrorist organization in the world right now, and so we're mindful of that. What we haven't seen in the intelligence stream is any specific evidence that Iran, the regime in Tehran, was witting and involved in the planning, resourcing, or directing of these attacks over last weekend. Now, that said, we're still looking through all that intelligence. We're still examining what evidence might be out there. We just haven't seen it to date. And quite frankly, our Israeli counterparts haven't either.
I certainly take your point, Admiral, that you're mindful of the threat Iran poses and its financing, of course, of Hamas, and the threat Hamas poses. But if I could respectfully challenge the implications of the $6 billion that I know that you've taken a number of questions on. I know that you have said, and your administration has said, that that was just for humanitarian reasons. But there's reporting now saying that it's not going to be handed over to Iran by Qatar anytime soon. Does that not imply to people watching today that you actually do have an understanding that it could have freed up other funds for Iran to use for nefarious reasons like the ones you just spelled out?
None of that money has been spent. Not a dime of it has gone into Iran. And remember, it wouldn't go to the regime anyway. It would always go to vendors that were pre-approved to buy humanitarian goods to get directly to the Iranian people. But as that money sits in a bank in Qatar, it has not been spent or allocated, and I think I'm just going to leave it there.
Is that at your administration's direction?
I think I'm just going to leave my response where I left it. Not a dime has been allocated to go into Iran for any humanitarian purposes, and that's where things stand. And we're going to watch that money very, very closely, as we have been, and we always will going forward. We're going to watch it like a hawk, but not a single dime has been allocated or spent.
Why can't you answer if that's at the direction of your administration? Are you worried about provoking Iran's regime?
I'm simply not going to go beyond my response on this.
But why?
I'm simply not going to go beyond my response on this.
I'm just asking. I'm not trying to be glib in any way, Admiral. I'm asking because the implication and the criticism, I guess, of your administration at the time was, again, I know all the conditions around the money, but essentially that you're providing more liquidity for a regime that you have just detailed, finances a terrorist organization that has attacked in great brutality and severity Israel on Saturday. Why would you hesitate to say you don't want that money to go to Iran right now?
All I can do is tell you that not a dime has been spent, not a dime has been allocated out of that fund, and we're watching it very, very, very closely. And just to this point about fungibility, the idea that it provides some fungibility for the regime just doesn't stand up to the facts. First of all, these attacks in Israel were planned months and months and months before the arrangement to get our Americans home was actually consummated, which included the transfer of this money from South Korea into Qatar. And it's not as if over these many years, the Iranians are sitting there making choices about, well, should we buy more weapons or should we feed our people? They've not been interested in feeding the Iranian people or any of the humanitarian concerns of their own citizens. They've been devoting resources as best they can to supporting terrorism, which is why we have, in this administration, in the last 2.5 years, executed sanctions on some 400 entities, 300 of those in just the last year alone. And they are for supporting terrorist networks, they're for maritime shipping attacks, they're for supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. I mean, we constantly are holding Iran accountable, and we'll continue to do that.
If I could pick up, Admiral, on the point about this being planned for a number of months. The House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee head Michael McCall told reporters this week that Egypt had warned Israel about Hamas's attack 3 days before it happened. Do you know that to be true?
I cannot confirm that report.
Did the U.S. have any intelligence that you can confirm for people watching today that this had been planned in advance of it happening, or was U.S. intelligence also caught off guard?
I'm not going to get into specific intelligence matters. Obviously, attacks of this nature that were as complex as they were had to have been planned for many months. I mean, Hamas, this was an operation unlike any that we've ever seen from Hamas. So I think that it's a safe assumption that there was a lot of planning that went on here. And look, there's going to come a time when we and our Israeli counterparts, particularly our Israeli counterparts, will take a look at the intelligence that led up to those attacks. Now's not that time. Now is the time to make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself, and that we are improving our intelligence sharing and gathering and collection with our Israeli counterparts, so that as they prosecute targets against Hamas, they can do so with the most confidence possible.
I know your time is very limited. My last question then is on the present situation, and that is, of course, around what's happening in Gaza at the moment and the striking of those targets. Is there, or can you update us on the conversations that are happening about opening up a humanitarian corridor with Egypt and Israel? Do you think that is likely to happen?
We're certainly working at it hard. I can't be perfectly predictive, but we are literally nonstop communicating with our Israeli counterparts and with our counterparts in Egypt to see if there's a way we can get some safe passage open. So for those who are in Gaza that want to leave, and a lot of them aren't going to want to leave, it's home, but for those who do, that they have a safe way to get out. It's just as important, quite frankly, that we continue to maintain some sort of corridor for humanitarian assistance to get in. The United States believes that the Palestinian people in Gaza, they're victims too. They didn't ask for this, and we are the largest contributor of humanitarian assistance to them. We mean to keep that going.
Do you believe that Egypt has a moral responsibility to open up its border?
We believe that everybody has a responsibility to do what we can do for the innocent Palestinian people of Gaza who are being actually victimized very much by Hamas, hiding behind them, using them as human shields, using tunnels under their homes and hospitals and schools as command bunkers. That's what terrorists do. We all have an obligation to do what we can to help the innocent people of Gaza, the innocent Palestinian people who did not bring this upon themselves.
Admiral Guilbeault, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.